For years, you have probably heard that sitting is the new smoking. It is a catchy phrase. It makes headlines. It scares people into standing desks. But what does the actual science say? Is sitting really as dangerous as a pack of cigarettes a day? Or is the wellness industry borrowing the scare factor of smoking to sell you something? I am Claire, a registered nutritionist, and welcome back to Longevity Lab.
And I am Robert. And Claire, I have to be honest with you, I have repeated that phrase myself. Sitting is the new smoking. I have told friends at dinner parties, I have nodded along when people say it. And now you are telling me it might not be that simple?
It is not that it is not serious, Robert. It is that the comparison is misleading in a way that actually hurts people's understanding of the problem. So, before we get into what the science really says about sedentary behavior, let me start with what we know for certain. Prolonged sitting is independently associated with higher risks of cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, certain cancers, and early death from all causes. That much is well established in the epidemiological literature. A 2017 study in the Annals of Internal Medicine analyzed data from nearly 8,000 people and found that those who sat for long periods had a significantly higher risk of death from all causes, even after controlling for how much formal exercise they reported doing. So the risk is real.
Okay, so you are confirming the risk is real. That is exactly what I have been telling people. So where is the myth?
The myth is in the comparison to smoking. Look, Robert, nobody would tell you that sitting is harmless. But let us compare the actual numbers. Smoking a pack of cigarettes a day increases your risk of lung cancer by roughly 25-fold. That is 25 times the risk of a non-smoker. The increased risk of cardiovascular disease from prolonged sitting is somewhere between 1.2 and 1.8-fold, not 25-fold. So the magnitude of risk is not comparable. But here is why the phrase is actually harmful.
I am listening.
Because when you tell people that sitting is as bad as smoking, two things happen. The first is that people who sit a lot and do not smoke think, well, I am already doomed, so why bother changing anything? That is called the fatalism trap. The second thing is that people who do smoke think, well, I am already doing the really bad thing, so what is the point of worrying about sitting? The comparison trivializes smoking and hyperbolizes sitting. Neither is helpful. What we need is a clear-eyed view of what prolonged sitting actually does to you, and then a realistic science-backed strategy to counter it.
Okay, that is already more nuanced than anything I have ever said at a dinner party. So what does prolonged sitting actually do to the body? And I want the mechanism, not just the headline.
So, let me paint you a picture. Imagine you have just eaten lunch. You go back to your desk. You sit down. Within about 60 to 90 minutes of uninterrupted sitting, something measurable starts to happen in your vascular system. The blood flow in your legs slows down significantly. More specifically, something called shear stress, which is the force of blood flowing across the inner lining of your arteries. That shear stress drops. And that matters because shear stress is what signals the endothelial cells lining your blood vessels to produce nitric oxide.
I have heard of nitric oxide. That is the molecule that relaxes blood vessels, right? The one men take supplements for?
Exactly. Nitric oxide is a vasodilator. It relaxes the smooth muscle in your artery walls, lowers blood pressure, improves circulation. It is essential for cardiovascular health. And the primary signal for its release is mechanical. It is the friction of blood moving against the vessel wall. So when you sit and your leg muscles are inactive, blood pools flow, slows, shear stress drops, and nitric oxide production declines. within a single session of prolonged sitting. Now, compound that over months and years, and you get a vascular system that is chronically less responsive, stiffer, and more prone to inflammation.
So the inactivity itself is directly causing vascular damage by the hour.
By the hour. And that is just the vascular piece. There is also the metabolic piece. When you sit, your large postural muscles, especially the glutes and the quadriceps, are essentially switched off. And those muscles are major consumers of blood glucose. They are insulin sensitive tissue. When they are inactive for extended periods, your body's ability to clear glucose from the bloodstream drops significantly.
So my muscles are like glucose sponges. And when I sit, I am squeezing the sponge dry and leaving the glucose in my blood.
That is a brilliant analogy. Yes, muscle tissue is the largest glucose disposal depot in your body. Your muscles are responsible for about 70 to 80% of insulin-stimulated glucose uptake. So when those muscles are not contracting, your insulin sensitivity declines. And this happens within a single session of sitting. Studies have shown that after just one day of prolonged sitting, post-meal glucose and insulin spikes are significantly higher compared to a day where you break up sitting with light walking.
One day. That is alarming.
It is. But here is the empowering part. It is also rapidly reversible. The damage from sitting is not like the damage from smoking, where the carcinogens cause DNA mutations that accumulate over decades. The damage from sitting is metabolic and mechanical, and it responds quickly to movement. Within minutes of standing up and walking, blood flow increases, shear stress goes back up, nitric oxide production resumes, glucose uptake improves, the biology does not hold a grudge.
That is actually reassuring. So it is not that I have done permanent damage by sitting for the last 30 years. It is that my body is ready to respond the moment I start moving more.
Exactly. And that changes the conversation from a fear-based one to an empowerment-based one. The question is not how much permanent damage have I done. The question is what can I do today and every day to keep my biology in a healthy, active state.
All right. So we have established that prolonged sitting is bad, but not smoking bad. We have established that the damage is real, but rapidly reversible. Now give me the actual strategy, not just stand more. I need specifics.
Good. Because this is where the science gets really interesting. The fitness industry has sold us on the idea that health comes in discrete chunks. The 1-hour gym session, the 30-minute run, the 45-minute yoga class. And those are all valuable, but the research on sedentary behavior reveals something different. The risk associated with sitting is not fully offset by a single block of exercise at the end of the day.
Wait, say that again? You are telling me that going for a run after work does not cancel out sitting all day?
It partially offsets it. It does not fully cancel it out. And this is a finding that surprises a lot of people. A 2019 study published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine looked at this exact question. They analyzed data from studies involving over 1 million participants, and they found that people who sat for 8 hours a day but also did 60 to 75 minutes of moderate intensity exercise per day had a risk level comparable to people who sat less. But here is the catch: that is 60 to 75 minutes per day. The vast majority of people are not doing that. For people doing the more typical 30 minutes of exercise per day, the risk from prolonged sitting was still significantly elevated.
So the common advice of just exercise more is incomplete.
It is incomplete. Because the problem is not just that you are not exercising enough. The problem is that you are spending 10 to 12 hours a day in a state of muscular and metabolic quiescence. No single hour of exercise can fully compensate for that. The body needs frequent signals of movement throughout the day, not just a single concentrated dose.
That is a paradigm shift from how most people think about fitness.
It is. And that is why one of the most powerful concepts in the longevity research right now is something called NEAT, non exercise activity thermogenesis. And I will bet you have never been told about this by a fitness influencer.
I have not even heard the term. Spell it out.
NEAT stands for non exercise activity thermogenesis. It is all the energy you expend doing everything that is not formal exercise: walking to the kitchen, fidgeting at your desk, standing while on the phone, gardening, taking the stairs, carrying groceries. These activities account for a surprisingly large portion of your total daily energy expenditure, anywhere from 15 to 50% depending on your lifestyle.
50% of my daily calorie burn could be from just moving around during the day.
Absolutely. And here is the research that made me personally rethink my entire approach. A 2005 study by Dr. James Levine at the Mayo Clinic, he is one of the leading researchers on NEAT, found that lean individuals naturally stand and move about 2 hours more per day than obese individuals, 2 hours. That difference accounted for approximately 350 calories per day. That is the equivalent of a moderate jog for most people without ever putting on running shoes.
350 calories just from standing and moving more during the day.
Yes. And this is not about fidgeting as a weight loss strategy. It is about understanding that movement is not something you have to schedule. Movement is something you can integrate into the fabric of your day. And that is especially important for people in their 60s and beyond, where high intensity exercise might not be appropriate or sustainable.
That resonates deeply with me because I will be honest, I have had periods where I try to go to the gym 5 days a week and I burn out in 3 weeks. But standing and moving more during the day, that feels doable.
It is doable and it is backed by strong evidence. Let me give you a specific study. In 2022, a study published in JAMA Internal Medicine followed over 47,000 older adults in Japan. They looked at the relationship between daily step count and all-cause mortality, and they found something that directly supports the NEAT concept. Compared to people who took about 4,000 steps per day, people who took 8,000 steps per day had a 51% lower risk of death from all causes, and the benefits continued to increase up to about 12,000 steps per day.
4,000 to 8,000 steps, that is roughly a 30 to 40-minute walk per day.
Spread out across the day. That is the key. The people in the study were not all doing one long walk. They were accumulating steps throughout the day, parking farther from the store, taking the stairs, walking while on the phone. Those small decisions compound.
So we're talking about a strategy that is accessible to almost anyone, regardless of fitness level.
Exactly. And I want to be very clear. I am not saying formal exercise is unimportant. Resistance training is critical for maintaining muscle mass as we age. Aerobic exercise is critical for cardiovascular fitness. Do not abandon your gym routine, but supplement it with NEAT. The research suggests that the combination of regular formal exercise plus high NEAT is the most protective pattern for longevity.
Okay, so what does a high NEAT day actually look like for a person with a desk job?
Let me give you a concrete framework. And I have to credit Dr. Levine's work at the Mayo Clinic for this. He recommends what he calls the movement snack approach. Every 30 to 60 minutes of sitting, you do 2 to 3 minutes of movement. That is it, 2 to 3 minutes. Not a workout, walk to the water fountain. Do 10 calf raises, march in place for a minute, walk to the bathroom on a different floor. The specific movement does not matter as much as the frequency.
Every 30 to 60 minutes. And that is enough to interrupt the damage cascade you described earlier?
It is enough. Because remember, The damage mechanism I described is triggered by the absence of muscle contraction and blood flow. Even small amounts of contraction and movement restore the mechanical signals. The nitric oxide production resumes. The glucose uptake improves. The blood flow normalizes. You do not need to run a marathon. You need to not be completely still for hours.
That is liberating. I have been telling myself I need to do more, and the barrier has been that more feels overwhelming. But 2 minutes every hour? I can do that while I brush my teeth. I can do that while I wait for my coffee to brew.
And those are exactly the moments to use. Let me tell you about a population that embodies this principle. The inhabitants of Sardinia, Italy. Sardinia is one of the world's 5 blue zones, regions with the highest concentration of centenarians, and researchers have studied their movement patterns closely. The Sardinians do not go to the gym, they do not run marathons. Their activity is woven into the fabric of their daily lives. They walk to the market. They walk uphill to their homes. They tend gardens. They stand and talk to neighbors. They move constantly, but never intensely enough to call it exercise.
They get the movement without the burnout.
Exactly. And that is the model we should be adapting for modern life. The Sardinians did not invent a new exercise program. They preserved a way of living that includes movement by default. Our modern environment has engineered movement out of daily life, and then we try to compensate with 90 minutes at the gym. It would be more effective and more sustainable to engineer movement back into our default environment.
So, practically, what would you suggest for someone like me who is 64, has a desk job, and wants to apply this starting tomorrow?
I would give you 3 specific strategies, and I want you to pick one to start. Strategy 1 is the 20-minute rule. Set a timer for 20 minutes every time you sit down. When it goes off, stand up and walk for at least 2 minutes. Do not skip it, it is non negotiable. Strategy 2 is the standing desk transition, but done correctly. A lot of people buy standing desks and then stand perfectly still for an hour. That is better than sitting, but it is not enough. The real benefit comes from alternating between sitting, standing, and walking. So if you have a standing desk, integrate swaying, shifting weight, stepping in place. The movement is the medicine, not the posture.
What is strategy 3?
Strategy 3 is what I call the deficit commute. Everyone has some part of their day where they can add a small amount of walking. Park at the far end of the parking lot. Get off the bus one stop early. Walk to the store instead of driving for the small errand. These micro decisions add up to thousands of steps per week. And the research shows that even small increases in daily steps produce measurable health improvements.
I am going to do all 3.
I would pick one to start. Because the research on habit formation is very clear. People who try to change everything at once typically sustain none of the changes. Pick the strategy that feels easiest. Master it for 2 weeks, then add the next one.
You are right. And I think the deficit commute is the one for me. I have been driving to the corner store for milk when it is a 7-minute walk. That is ridiculous.
And if you do that twice a week, you are adding about 1,500 steps per week just from milk runs. That is meaningful.
So before we wrap up, let me try to summarize what I think I learned today. And please correct me if I am wrong, because I want to get this right. 1, sitting is unhealthy, but comparing it to smoking is misleading and actually counterproductive. The risk magnitude is not comparable. 2, the damage from sitting happens quickly, within the first hour, but it also reverses quickly when you move. So it is not permanent damage. It is a state you can change. 3, the gym is important, but it is not enough to fully offset a sedentary day. You need movement distributed throughout the day. And 4, neat, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. is the secret weapon that most people overlook, and it can account for a significant portion of daily energy expenditure and metabolic health.
That is an excellent summary. I would add only one thing. The research shows that the most protective pattern is the combination regular formal exercise plus high NEAT. Do not drop your gym habit, but do not let your gym habit make you feel like you have permission to be sedentary the rest of the day. The people who live the longest and healthiest are the ones who exercise and move.
I love that. So let me share what I am going to do differently starting tomorrow. I am going to set a timer on my phone for every 30 minutes. When it goes off, I am going to stand up and walk to the kitchen and back. That is maybe 45 seconds, but it breaks the sitting. And I am also going to walk to the corner store instead of driving. Those are my two commitments.
Those are excellent. And I will do you one better. Let me tell you what I have started doing. I work from home, and I used to sit through all my phone calls. Now I stand and pace during every phone call. A 30-minute phone call now gets me about 2,000 steps. I did not add any time to my day. I just repurposed the time I was already spending.
That is brilliant. And that is the whole philosophy, is not it? Not adding more to the to-do list, just redesigning what you already do to include more movement.
Exactly. And look, for anyone listening who has an existing health condition or joint issues or mobility limitations, the principle still applies, but the form will look different. If walking is painful, can you do seated marches? Can you do arm circles? Can you shift your weight from side to side? The goal is to disrupt the metabolic stillness, not to hit a specific step count. Consult your doctor about what movement is safe for you, but do not assume that limited mobility means you cannot benefit from this principle.
That is such an important point. The core insight of this episode is not about running a certain distance. It is about ending the hours of stillness.
Ending the hours of stillness. That is the one behavior change that the evidence most consistently supports. And it is achievable. It does not require a gym membership. It does not require expensive equipment. It requires awareness and then a small action every time you have sat for too long.
All right, I'm going to go stand up right now.
I will join you. And I think that is the perfect place to wrap up today's episode.
If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to subscribe to Longevity Lab. We release a new episode every single day, and we base every claim on real science. No hype, no supplement sales, just evidence.
And if you have a friend who has been telling people at dinner parties that sitting is the new smoking, send them this episode. We are here to help everyone get the science right.
Today's rule: do not fear the chair, but do not let it own your day.
Perfect. See you next time.
See you.